This is normally where Doug says, hello, I'm Doug Robinson, and I'm the lead minister here at Sugar Grove Church of Christ. I am not Doug, no matter what your program says. I am Kirk, and I'm not the lead minister. I'm the guy that sits over there with my kids, and appreciate the invitation to bring a word from the Scriptures to you today. I want to start with my favorite quotation from one of my favorite books. This is from Annie Dillard and a book she wrote called Holy the Firm. She's talking about her little retreat out in the woods in the country and the little church that she goes to when she's there. There's only one church here, so I go to it. On Sunday mornings, I quit the house and wander down the hill to the white frame church in the firs. On a big Sunday, there might be 20 of us there. Often I'm the only person under 60 and feel as though I'm on an archaeological tour of Soviet Russia. The members are of mixed denominations. The minister is a Congregationalist and wears a white shirt. The man knows God. Once, in the middle of a long pastoral prayer of intercession for the whole world, for the gift of wisdom to its leaders, for hope and mercy to the grieving and the pained, succor to the oppressed, and God's grace to all. In the middle of all of this, he stopped and burst out, Lord, we bring you these same petitions every week. After a shocked pause, he continued reading the prayer. Because of that moment, I like him very much. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I like that minister very much too. That moment of honesty and frustration in the midst of prayer. We've prayed this before. We prayed it last week and the week before, and we don't yet see an answer. There's a game that we play in church sometimes. The game is called, Wouldn't It Be Great If We Were Really Open with Each Other About the Struggles That We Share? And when somebody says that, here's how you win this game. You say, that would be awesome. What are you struggling with? And then they say, oh, you know, the usual. And you say, yeah, I feel ya. And then you go home. That's how we play that game. I want to play the wouldn't it be great if we were open about the struggles that we share game this morning, and I am going to lose. And I want to tell you, I guess I've known for 6 weeks I would be preaching today, and I read the text and looked and looked and looked, and I could not find a way to be honest about what I think is happening in this text without also being honest about how it strikes me and how it strikes the people who know the frustration of praying and saying, when is this going to be answered? My heart resonates with the pain of the original readers in the Isaiah text. Let me tell you about the text that we're in. I have chapter 40 through 44 assigned to me today. Doug took 1 through 39. That kind of annoys me because 1 through 39 is all the wonderful doom and gloom stuff, and that will preach. And Doug did a really excellent job, although to be honest, it wasn't quite doomy enough for my own personal taste, because there's the Lord's coming down and he's really upset and he's going to burn everything and you've got it coming, and man, like, ooh, that, and I kind of feel like Doug missed some great opportunities to go really old school with us, and he keeps finding the hope and the grace in the middle of all this doom stuff. He gives me the comfort passages. I am not good with the comfort passages. And Isaiah 40 through 44 is mainly comfort with a little bit of sarcasm, and I love that part. And then it's more hope and comfort. Between chapter 39 and chapter 40, there is a big time jump. Big. About 150 years. And all the stuff that Isaiah prophesied would come to you, that God would do when his frustration with the sins of Israel became too much to bear, all the ways that Israel would be punished until they returned to the ways of the Lord, all the things that were prophesied have happened in this invisible gap between chapter 39 and chapter 40. And in chapter 40, we are past the horror, looking back on it. And what the horror is the Babylonian captivity. And if you remember your Bible history about 587, 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar and the forces of Babylon rolled over Jerusalem, broke down the walls surrounding the city, captured the king, put his sons to death in front of him, blinded him so his son's death would be the last thing he would ever see, carted him off into captivity in Babylon, took all the young, promising, elite people of Judah to Babylon as well, tore the city down, raided the temple, and left just a few people behind to sort of till the soil and keep things going. That's rough. Already messed up the order I was going to say stuff in. I knew that was going to happen this Sunday. I knew it was going to happen. In Isaiah 40, we have a message of comfort. Probably to the people who were carted away to Babylon and who have been living in captivity in a foreign country for decades. And here is how Isaiah 40 begins, one of the most famous passages from this book. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, and that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. A voice of one calling, in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain. And the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all the people will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Wow! Comfort, comfort my people. It's all over. You've paid the penalty for your sins, and now everything's going to get more wonderful. The mountains are coming down. The rough places will be made level. The low places are brought up. It's going to be smooth walking from here on out. And the people exiled in Babylon hear this message and respond with a sentiment captured in chapter 40 and verse 27. My way is hidden from the Lord. My cause is disregarded by God. The full context there is, why is Israel saying, my way is hidden from the Lord, my context is disregarded by God? And I don't feel like that's a tough question. The temple was torn down. Their home is gone. Everything they knew has disappeared, and now they are strangers in somebody else's land. Why wouldn't you feel like you had been disregarded? 2 seasons of my life, I have struggled severely with my faith in God. The first time was because I read the Bible. Be careful when you do that, and have some safety harnesses and some people around who can help you, because if you have not sat down and read it from beginning to end, you are liable to encounter a few things that may trip you up. That, all in all, is a relatively easy kind of faith struggle in a way, because that struggle was all with my brain. I had some intellectual questions I needed to work out, and 2.5 years later, I found some reasonable answers that worked for me. The second season of my life, I really struggled with faith in God, was not about my brain at all. That one was about my heart. And that one is tougher. I remember Sandy and I, by the way, Sandy's not here. I have permission to tell every story I'm going to tell. She just didn't want to hear it, because we'll be revisiting some unpleasant things. We're driving down the road one day, Sandy and I, And we've got our iPod hooked up to the car, and I think it's on shuffle. And a song by Rich Mullins, who is still one of my favorite Christian singers, even though he's been dead for 20 years now. Song by Rich Mullins pops up in our shuffle, and it's a song called My Deliverer. One of the last ones he recorded before he died. In fact, he stopped by a little church with a little Kmart tape recorder and recorded some songs he was thinking of about Jesus, and then a week later died in a car wreck. And all we have from his voice on the last album is this little cassette that they cleaned up and released and called the Jesus Demos. And in this song, My Deliverer, he sings, "My deliverer is coming. My deliverer is standing by. He will never break his promise, though the stars should break faith with the sky. My deliverer is coming. My deliverer is standing by." I would sing that for you, but you do not want that. The song about deliverance comes on. Sandy turns to me with tears in her eyes and says, "Turn that off. Turn that off. Nobody's coming to deliver us." It took us a long time to get to that point. And it's hard looking back to sort of figure out, when did the struggle and the disillusionment first begin? One factor was I made a very unwise job choice. I had been in ministry. I moved from a church that was relatively healthy to one that looked healthy on the outside and was not on the inside. Jesus talks about whitewashed tombs, kind of one of those things. Looked beautiful, was really tough when you got in. And tomb was fitting because it just about killed me to be there. While I'm dealing with, I'm going to conservatively say, America's most dysfunctional church, maybe not the whole hemisphere, but at least this country, I feel confident in saying, Aiden is born. And we've been preparing our daughter, Alethea, for the arrival of a new baby brother. Man, your brother's going to be born. He's going to come home. You're going to be a big sister, which is exciting to her because she wants to be an adult. And so that's like a promotion up to big sister. I'm on my way to completely grown up. But when Aiden was born, he did not come home. Not for 2 weeks. When he was born, his APGAR number was 3. If you know what that is, you know that is not good. And that boy had some struggles. And the first time I really got to see him, he was under a plastic tent with tubes running in and out of his little body with 100% oxygen. And then came the infection that the doctors couldn't isolate. And then we discover the holes in his heart that we're hoping will seal up without incident. And I got to tell you, it was about day 5 of his life before we were really sure that at some point we're going to bring home a living child. He still has certain struggles that I think we trace back to that rough beginning. Man, that is stress. That is stress. And if you've had a child with acute critical health concerns, you know what that's like. Also wasn't fun for our pocketbook. Even with insurance, neonatal intensive care is not cheap. So there's $12,000 that 2 weeks. Ouch. Ouch. Fortunately, our savings account was $11,000. So we almost could cover that. The next year, while Aiden is still doing physical therapy twice a week and we're still going through our struggles with him, and I'm still dealing with all kinds of weird stress at this church, where different leaders would just stand up and say things that were not true, and I knew that they weren't true, and they knew that I knew that they weren't true, but how do you break out of that? My favorite one is when they stood up and announced that all the ministry staff had agreed to salary cuts, and nobody had talked to us about salary cuts, and I look at the associate minister, and he's like, "Why do you, no, we did not, we took a salary cut." And went on with life. I told them at one point that, and the associate minister had resigned in anger, and that's the end of that. And I said, I think I need to transition out too. And my mistake was telling them that I'm going to start transitioning because the response was, "Okay, you're fired." All right. We put our house on the market. The house I had bought thinking we would retire in it. The housing market had just turned badly in North Carolina where we were living. Bought it for $179, sold it for $152. We had just lost all our savings with Aiden last year. We had enough equity that we didn't have to pay a check to get rid of the house. We got a check, $600. No job, no house, savings gone, $600. Child with intense needs. My deliverer is coming. Said the song, and Sandy says, turn that off. Turn that off. I don't know if I can convey what it's like to have thing after thing build on the stressful side of the ledger and thing after thing taken away on the comfort side of the ledger. Far away from the friends and family that we grew up with, now out of a church that wasn't really much of a comfort anyway, scrambling just to figure out how are we going to feed these two children. Not where I'd imagined myself at age 38 with 2 master's degrees, and hey, we are functionally homeless. And so when the Israelites read, comfort, comfort my people, the hard stuff is over, everything is about to get easy, and they say, I kind of understand the I am just hoping I am not the only person in this room who has ever thought, can there really be a God who loves me and cares about me if this is happening? Because, wow, this is going to be an embarrassing thing to have on YouTube if it is just me. C.S. Lewis, in his book, A Grief Observed, talks about how he felt dealing with the loss of his wife, a woman that he met late in life. He was kind of a confirmed bachelor in his 50s, meets this woman, falls in love, gets married, and then she's diagnosed with cancer and dies 18 months later. His best book, in my opinion, came out of that struggle. Here are some of the things that he says that have stuck with me. We were promised suffering. Sufferings were part of the program. We were even told, blessed are they that mourn. And I accept that. I've got nothing that I didn't bargain for. But it's different when it happens to you and not to others. And when it happens in reality, not in your imaginations. Talk to me about the truth of religion and I'll listen gladly. Talk to me about the duty of religion, and I'll listen submissively. But don't come talking to me about the consolations of religion, or I will suspect that you don't understand. Finally, from Lewis, it's not that I am, I think, in much danger of ceasing to believe in God. The real danger is in coming to believe such dreadful things about Him. The conclusion that I fear is not, so there's no God after all, but so this is what God's really like. Deceive yourself no longer. All right, it's not just me, it's me and C.S. Lewis. 2 of us. The people of God, the Israelites, in Isaiah 40, are destitute. All their treasures have been taken by Babylon. They are homeless. All their homes were torn down. They are lost in an enemy country. And they have a moment of profound theological crisis. There are 2 competing theories. Number 1, God is powerful, but He doesn't care about us. That's the chapter 40, verse 27. All right? Our cause has been disregarded. The other theory is God cares about us, but isn't powerful. Now, He loves us, but couldn't compete against the gods of Babylon. They were stronger, and the gods of Babylon have won. So we have a wonderful, sweet God who loves us, but in the end couldn't be there to save us. And I think those are probably the two dominant theories as we have this new writing in Isaiah chapter 40. And so much of what we have in this section is Isaiah saying it is not that God is not powerful. This God made the heavens and the earth and everything in it. And he gives us exalted language. In fact, God is not only the most powerful God, he is the only God. And every other idol is fake and false. And it's not that he doesn't care. He cares deeply. He cared so deeply that he could not let our society continue to beat down the poor and neglect the widows and hurt each other and live for greed, because what we were doing to each other pained him immensely, and he had to hit reset to get us to come back to a righteous viewpoint. So those are still the dominant theories when the new prophet comes around with this message of hope. In case you have not noticed, the response of the Israelites in exile, does God really care about me? Is he really there? Can he really protect me? Isaiah chapter 40, verse 27 is not the only time in the Bible that somebody says that. One of my favorites, Psalm 88, and by the way, I just told you like way too much about myself that is my favorite psalm because it is not a fun one. But I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning, my prayer comes before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me? Why do you hide your face from me? From my youth, I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors, and I'm in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long, they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You have taken from me friends and neighbors. Darkness is my only friend now. That will preach. Darkness is my only friend now. Hey, that's the Bible. The sons of Korah writing their hymn to God. Where are you? Or how about the prophet Habakkuk, first part of his book? How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you don't listen? Or I cry out to you, violence, but you do not save. Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife. Conflict abounds. Hey, that's the prophet. And we saved his book and put it in the Holy Scriptures. The Son of God, the Messiah, the Holy One incarnate, Jesus the Christ, his last words on the cross, Matthew chapter 27 records them as, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? If I am the only one who struggled with feeling forsaken by God, I've got great company. I've got some psalmists and some prophets and Jesus Christ, the Holy Son of God. Why have you forsaken me? Where have you been? I know people whose gift is joyously believing all the hopey, comforty stuff in the Bible. And I love those people. And they're a little bit weirded out by the sermon right now, so I'm sorry, guys. There are people who just have such an intense gift of faith that no matter what they're going through, but God has promised. And they can be homeless and destitute and eating glass out of a dumpster, but God has promised, and just believe it. And I love that we have people with that gift. That ain't my gift. So I need y'all around. I desperately need y'all around. And so do some of the rest of us. I'm going to skip the Isaiah 44 stuff and just put it up on YouTube myself from the house. You guys can check it out later. And move to this. In addition to the message of hope and comfort and your time of terror is over, God brings a commission to his people living in Babylon. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 8. But you, Israel my servant, Jacob whom I have chosen, You descendants of Abraham, my friend, I took you from the ends of the earth, from its farthest. You are my servant. I have chosen you and have not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. You're not in this alone. I am with you, but I also have a calling for you. He refers to Israel as his servant in chapter 41, and in chapter 42, he announces to the world what his servant will be doing. Israel, my servant. And so, just imagine him sort of pointing to the Israelites in exile. Here's my servant whom I have chosen. And he says, here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice on earth. In his teaching, the islands will put their hope. And I think what is happening is God sees a people disheartened, struggling to trust, who have gone through enormously difficult trials, way worse than what caused me to struggle with my faith. And he says to them, I am building a community out of you, servants. And your commission is to take the bruises and the burned out people, those bruised reeds, those smoldering wicks, and to care for them. You're not going to throw them out. You're not going to snuff them out. This is now your area of responsibility. If that passage in Isaiah 42 seems familiar to you, it's probably because, well, maybe because you love Isaiah, but because Matthew quotes it in Matthew chapter 12 about why Jesus is healing all these oppressed, broken down, last, lost, least kind of people. This is his commission. And as God called Israel to be a servant to the bruised reeds and smoldering wicks of the world, so Jesus has taken up that commission. But it's not Jesus' commission alone. He's leading the way, but it's our commission as followers of Christ. We get bruised in so many ways, and our flame sputters. Years and years ago, a Bible teacher, one of my classes, was talking about this passage. What does it mean to not break a bruised reed? What does it mean to not snuff out a smoldering wick? And he told me that with me for like 26 years now. In the ancient world, your lamp is basically a basin with oil, probably olive oil, and a wick that sticks out. And you light the wick, and it slowly draws through the olive oil to burn the flame. And if at some point the ends of that wick start to get frayed and charred, then instead of a beautiful, clear, sweet-smelling light, you get this kind of smoky, obnoxious, your tent is filled with smoke, horrible kind of light. And so the easiest thing to do is wicks are cheap. A dime a dozen at Canaanite Walmart. They'll ship them in bulk. Amazon Prime give you wicks the next day. So you just pull out the wick, throw it away, pop in a new one. They're disposable. Almost nothing more useless than a smoldering wick. Toss it, get a new one. Or a bruised reed. Well, you use reeds to make all kinds of things. You can weave them together into baskets and helpful things, maybe pound them into pulp and make some kind of writing stuff. You can make papyrus on it. It's cool. And reeds are plentiful and cheap. They grow down by the river. Grab yourself a handful, start weaving your basket together. And what happens when you find a bruised spot? That bruised spot is going to weaken the basket that you are trying to make. And you'd want to be sure that that bruised reed doesn't get mixed in with the good strong reeds, so you break it in half so you don't accidentally grab it and you throw it away. Normal operating procedure. throw away the smoldering wick, toss that bruised reed in half. Every person hearing this prophecy in the ancient world, they just did that this morning. Went through their collection of reeds and broke the bruised ones, pulled out the smoldering wicks and put in new ones. But if you are really patient, I mean super patient, and really skilled, take your knife and just start carefully pulling away the frayed and smoldering ends of that wick. Keep it, preserve it, take away the burned and damaged parts until the light is shining clearly again. Nobody does that, but you could. You could. Or if you're a master craftsman, I mean really, really an excellent craftsman, and you're patient and careful, you can keep those bruised reeds and sort of work them into your wicker basket so that every bruised spot is supported by the strength of the strong parts of another reed around it. And it might take you twice as long to weave that basket, but you can use every single reed and not waste a one. Bruised reeds, smoldering wicks. If you know what that feels like, to be bruised and smoldering, I want to tell you we have a God who promises patient rejuvenation. And I wish I had time to tell you the stories of all the people who worked with me and helped me and showed me the love of God as I slowly made my way back to a stronger faith. It's a long list of wonderful people. If you do not currently feel bruised, if you are not currently smoldering, if you feel strong and like you're shining a bright light, you have been called to be a gentle repairer of the frayed wicks and a gentle weaver of the bruised reeds. And the rest of us need your strength as together we let God weave us into a community shining brightly where the bruises are covered in His grace and His light shines brightly through us all.